In this lesson, we're going to begin creating the cylinder for the weapon. Alright, so let's go ahead and start out with a cylinder, and we're going to create a 12-sided cylinder, because if we take a look at our reference image, the cylinder is going to hold 6 bullets, and where the space is flat, that's where the bullet is going to be, and then there's this indentation that goes in between the rounds, just to give them some sort of separation. So let's go ahead and create a 12-sided cylinder, and we'll start blocking out this information. So let's go to our left view, and then I'm just going to left click and drag out a cylinder about the width that we see in our reference image there. And then let's go ahead and just nail down a height there. We don't really care about that just yet. Let's go ahead and take our radius down to 2.4 just to make sure that it's a nice even number. And then we're going to rotate this 90 degrees. Now with that rotated, let me go ahead and move this back to the edge of the reference image, and let's convert it to editable poly. Let's take the vertices along the front edge and let's pull those forward up to here, so that way it meets with the barrel there. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and start thinking about how this is going to set. Okay. So looking at this, at the top of the cylinder, there's a flat space. So a bullet is going to rest right here in the center. It needs to line up with the barrel. And so what I want to do is I actually want to rotate the cylinder just a little bit more to where there's a flat edge on top. So if I take a look at my front view, hitting F on the keyboard, and then we hit F3, you'll notice that it's pointed here at the top. So let's go ahead and just rotate this. And if we rotate it 15 degrees, now we get this flat edge across the top. Okay, so now what I can do is I can actually use these polygons to help create the indentions that are needed for the shape of that cylinder. Now before we start getting into that detail, let's go ahead and set the holes where the bullets are going to be resting. And so let's go ahead and create a new shape, and I'm going to use a circle. Now the circle, I want to go ahead and set it up before we create it, and I'm going to go to my interpolation, and I want to make sure that my steps are set to 1. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a low resolution circle. So let's go to our back view, hitting V and then K, and then let's hit Z to zoom in on our selection. What I want to do is I want to create it right here in the center of the barrel. So left click and drag out. You may have to hit F3 to go to wireframe view and get it roughly about the size that we need of the barrel. Okay. After that, let's go ahead and move it into position. We may want to take a look at our radius. We can do something like maybe 0.6 or so. That might give us a good value to go with. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this circle on my cylinder. So to do this, let's go to Align, and let's select the cylinder, and let's change it to the X, Y, and Z position. Go ahead and hit OK on that. And we know that that's perfectly centered on the cylinder, but now I need to move it up and just position it in the barrel. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the corners right here are touching these horizontal lines. That's just kind of a good way of judging that. Now what we can do is we can actually just scale up this radius of the cylinder, just scale it up, okay, or the circle I should say, and get it pretty close. So now that we have that set, let's go ahead and move it in our perspective view. So I'm going to hit P on the keyboard and then F3. And what I want to do is I want to bring that forward in the Y direction to where it's on the front edge of that cylinder. Now I may not be able to see it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and select the cylinder and then turn on isolate mode. Now I can select that circle, and I just want to put it right out on the outside edge. It doesn't have to be perfectly on it, just get close. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this to actually cut out the circles on my cylinder. Now before we can do that, we need to create 5 more circles on this because it's going to hold 6 bullets. So to do this, let's simply change the pivot point of our circle, and this can be done by going to the Hierarchy tab, Effect Pivot Only, and then we're going to use Align. Now with Align, we're going to select the cylinder. Notice that that changes the pivot point. Now it changes it and puts it in the center of the cylinder, so I'm going to turn off the Y direction, so that way it just moves in the X and Z and moves it straight down. Let's hit OK on that, turn off Effect Pivot Only, and then grab our rotation tool, hold down shift and rotate that in the Y direction, and we're going to rotate it 60 degrees because 60 times 6 is 360. So let's make 5 copies of that, and there we go. So now we're ready to start cutting on our cylinder. We're just using those circles as a guide. So select the cylinder and let's right click and go to cut. Now I want to be able to cut right on the vertices of these circles that I've created. They're going to be kind of like a template. And so in order to do this, I want to make sure that I have my snaps turned on. Let's also right click on our snaps toggle and turn off grid points and turn on vertex. So that way we're just cutting on the vertices of the object. Let's close that and then we can start cutting. Now before we do, I want to make sure that we create some extra segments in here for this. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to come in, I'm going to go to edge mode, so hit 2 on the keyboard, select this edge and this one, okay, and we're going to do every other edge, okay, and we're going to select those in pairs. And with these selected, I'm just going to connect those because what I want is a segment right down the center so it matches up with this point right here on the circle. So let's do connect, and we want to do just one segment, but you'll notice they're trying to connect on that front face. That's going to be an issue for us. Let's go ahead and just hit OK on that, but let's select these extra edges on the inside, and let's hit Control Backspace to remove those. Let's just do one side at a time, however. So Control Backspace, and then we're going to go along the back side, and we'll hit Control Backspace. Okay, perfect. So there we have that. All right, so now all we have to do is come in and go to vertex mode, and I'm going to go to my back view hitting V and then K, and then I'm going to right click and cut. Let's cut right on this vertex, and you'll notice that it's snapping to the vertices of the object, and I'm just going to go around each circle one at a time, and I'm going to end right where I started on the circle. So right here. Perfect. Right click and then cut. Now sometimes the vertex cut may get off a little bit. It's trying to cut on a different vertex it may have found in the back. So what we want to do is go ahead and hit Control Z. Let's go back. Let's try that cut again. We try to cut that a little bit closer to the circle, and in the perspective view it might work a little bit better. But again, after each cut, make sure that you're inspecting where that is actually cutting and making sure that that's right on the line. And that looks good. Let's right click and let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to continue this process all the way around. Okay. So let's go ahead and continue to cut these, and trying to be careful about where we're cutting, because even though the snapping is turned on, it may not always be exact. Okay. So let's go down. And after we cut out all of these holes, what we can do is we can actually remove those polygons, and then we can put those on the other side too. I'm going to show you how to save some time for creating the other side using the symmetry modifier. And then we also need to make sure that we reconnect all of the polygons on the inside here, so that way we get nice quads. Because whenever we use Turbo Smooth, at the very beginning you want to make sure you're using quads in some fashion just to get started, and then you can start to change the topology based on your needs, okay, getting the exact look that you want. So after the quads, you can go ahead and start putting in triangles or n-gons if needed. Okay, so let's right click. We've cut out all of those circles. Now what we can do is go ahead and start filling in this polygon here. So to do this, let's go ahead and cut from here to here. Okay, and then I'm going to go across to here, and just kind of trying to fill these in. Okay, just like so. And let's go ahead and cut from here across to here. And what that does is that creates those quads. Just cut around, filling these in. So you can see here that that's going to work out perfectly with all the cuts that we've made so far. And again, just be careful whenever you're cutting those. Make sure you're getting the correct cut that you want, that it's snapping to the proper vertex. Okay. And this takes some time. Setting up the cylinder like this, we just want to make sure that our topology is good, so that way whenever we smooth it, everything works out. Alright, so it's going to kind of look like a honeycomb whenever we're finished with this. Let's try that one more time. Okay, almost finished with this. And then after we're done with this, in the next lesson we'll start up by showing you how to get the other side of that, and then we'll continue on with our detail for the cylinder. So meaning like we're going to get those little grooves that we find on the side and start nailing all of that down. Almost finished. Okay, so there we have all of our polygons there. Everything's looking good. Now we need to go ahead and create one right down the middle here, just like that. Okay, so that way we have all quads. Alright, so that looks good. In the next lesson we're going to get that information that we just created. We're going to put that onto the other side of the cylinder, and then we'll start creating the rest of our detail. So I'll see you then.